Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Day 2 to Game On Level Up Your Career Strategy Challenge. So excited for all of you to be here again as we continue to talk about how to use gamification design techniques to level up your career. My name is Caitlin Johnson. I am a master performance coach, and I have been privileged to be able to impact and coach over 70,000 global leaders on how to achieve epic results within their professional career using gamification strategies. So here we are, day 2. We had a fantastic day 1 kickoff where I was joined by Jim Hewling and Sarah Tendler talking about how to build your career map using purpose mapping. So yesterday was amazing. We talked about what we can think about to really fine tune and get a deeper level of clarity on where we want to advance forward within our career based on what feels purposeful to us. So that was a fantastic experience. You can watch the replay by visiting my profile link. And I'm proud to say we got some really fantastic feedback, one of which I'll read, which says, I think for me, it's reviewing things from a newer lens, a deeper level of clarity based on new information. And that's actually enticing for me. And that's exactly what I'm looking for right now, for all of you to walk away with new light bulb moments as we talk about the gamification design techniques and how to incorporate them into your career strategy. It's a way to think differently, and we live in a time in which that it's required of us to be innovative and quick thinking. And so using gamification design strategies is one way to do that. Plus, it's fun. And if it's not fun, it's not really getting done, is it? All right, maybe it's getting done, but begrudgingly, right? So excited to continue on day 2 here today. I want to mention yesterday when we were going through the purpose mapping, Jim and Sarah were talking about how that map was a really great opportunity to think about your strengths and your talents and really get clear on that. But here's the thing, I don't know about you, but it took me a while to actually think about what are my natural talents and strengths and how do I verbalize that and communicate about my value to other individuals, which is critical when we're thinking about advancing our career or looking for a new job. So today, that's what we're going to talk about, is how to create your career avatar in understanding what are your strengths, what are your natural talents, and then what are your values, and how do we start to communicate about those and align them to work that's extremely meaningful and purposeful for us. There is a worksheet that we'll post the link in the chat for that you can download and follow along all 5 days. And you can go back for yesterday, watch the replay, and then fill in that section 2 if you're joining us today. So follow along with that worksheet. And then at the end, on the 5th day, if you take a picture of it and send it to me, you have an opportunity to win a prize. Speaking of prizes, today 2 lucky participants will be selected as prize winners. So I encourage you to engage in the chat feature, ask your questions, and participate in today's Thinking Different opportunity. So let's dive into the topic of developing and creating your career avatar. I'm going to bring on my special guest, Adam Pingel, who's going to talk about this with me. And Adam is a vice president of global clients and facilitator at Ariel Group. He taught theater performance, public speaking, English, and religious education. He combines, this is so interesting, because he combines his performance background, his education experience, and his results-oriented business approach to every single customer interaction and engagement. He's an award-winning leader and previously held a gamification director design position. So Adam, welcome. So excited to have you join with me today as we talk about this amazing topic.
Thank you. Thank you. It's always fun to get to talk with you about gamification. It's something that, that's where we met. We got to know each other doing some good gamification work. So certainly something I love to do with you. So Glad to be.
Absolutely.
Thank you for
I
having me.
know. We're going to have a great conversation, and I'm already seeing some comments in the chat. Hi, Kimblin. I'm glad you were able to make your flight and you've landed. That's amazing. Julia, how's it going? She's calling in from Italy today. Love it. Marty, good to see you back. Patrick, same to you. And Amy, welcome. And I'm sure there's plenty of others on the call today listening in, and feel free to chime in as well as we go along. So, Adam, let's have this conversation about a career avatar and how we can apply the gamification strategies of that. So, what exactly is an avatar, and why should we be thinking about it when we think of ourselves in a career?
Yeah, perfect place to start. So remember that the foundation of gamification, what we're doing is we're looking at the principles that are used in gameplay that cause excitement, that cause engagement, that pull all of those internal motivators to get us to do things, right? And so when we start thinking about the way a game is played, most games start where you did yesterday, that there's some epic meaning that's there, some calling, you've got to save the world, you're the only one that can do it. But once you've got that epic meaning, then our attention is going to shift a little bit. Sometimes this happens right up front. Sometimes it kind of happens in the background a little subconsciously as you're going, but you start to identify who you are as a character within the game. So that's what we talk about as the avatar, is who you are as a character. So as you start playing, I think about Breath of the Wild, one of my favorites. I play that with my son all the time. I think about the beginning game, right? You get in there, you get this sense of epic meaning, and then you start to look at who you are as a player. And Link, you're there, you're at the beginning, you don't have a lot of strengths, you see a lot of gaps that are there, and you start to identify first what your skills are, and then second, what your skills could be. One of the things that I really love about the avatar mentality in terms of professional development is that within a game, there's usually somewhat of a scarcity around the skills that you can develop. You can't just go from 0 to 60 on everything all at once. You have to be strategic about it. You have to think about where it is that you're going to invest. And every game will do it a little bit differently, whether it's credits or experience points or just time played in the game. Where are you going to invest that in terms of your character's skills or your style of play, things like that? So there are a couple different ways you can go about that, but let me pause there.
Jump in, because what I'm hearing too, when we apply it to our lives and understanding what our strengths are, you got to say no to some good things, right? When you start to double down on where your true strengths are, understanding what those are, and then, putting some other things on the back burner. Or conversely, as you're going after your strengths, being aware of where your opportunities are and deciding, do I focus on those, or do I continue to double down on where my natural strengths are? So that's an interesting thought process as well.
Yeah, and you have to identify, I have a lot of gaps, both personally and professionally, and some of those gaps just don't bother me because I can get along without those skill sets. I don't need to be a great musician, for instance, to do well at my job. So I'm not going to worry about that. And that's how it is playing a game, is you have to identify, of my weaknesses that are there any of those gaps that I need to invest in to get to a minimal kind of optimacy where I can play the game. The other way to think about it is exactly what you're saying, is maybe instead of focusing on my gaps, because I've got a lot that are there, maybe I look at where my strengths are and make those world class. I was just reading this morning and a quote by Steve Jobs jumped out, and he's talking about quality over quantity. And he said, I'd rather have one home run than 2 doubles. I think that's something that we think about in gameplay, is that if I've got to pick one or the other, maybe it's worth finding that strength, make my strength world class. And that's then where I really am going to put my eggs.
Yeah, and that's how we then differentiate ourselves as well, right? When we figure out where we're strong, how we can become stronger at that, then that is our value proposition of how we become the better candidate when we're applying, or looking for that promotional opportunity. And we'll continue to talk on day 4 how to use those differentiators in networking and how to continue to apply that. So I love this component, and I'd love to hear from the chat, because we just threw at you a really different way at looking at thinking about your strengths and your opportunities and what your thoughts are so far on that piece of the conversation. And then Adam, there are different game player types within design, gamification design.
Yeah, and this gets interesting. So I think about my kids playing games with them. The way that I play a game with my 9-year-old daughter is going to be very different than how I play with my 12-year-old son. So do you want to go ahead and share the screen? We can look at some of these player types.
Yes.
Okay. So there are a lot of different ways that we try and put people in buckets, right? We work through mental models. It just helps us make sense of the world. So this is one model that's a very simple model. I think it will resonate with a lot of us, that a lot of research went into showing how people played games. Now, you can get really granular with this. I think that people have taken Bartle's 4 player types and separated it into like 32 and 64 different subtypes within that. We're talking very, very high level. So some people love to get into a game, and we call these the killers, and they just want to destroy everything. That's the fun of it. They just want to compete. They want to be on top. They want to destroy everything and everyone. The achievers is another bucket. We see a lot of achievers out in the world where it's all about going and hitting that goal. Let's climb the mountain. Let's get to the top. A lot of people will fall in this third, it's the lower left bucket of the socializers, where it's not so much getting the thing done, but it's getting the thing done with good people around me, right? And then you've got the explorers at the end. These are those who are going to ask the hard questions. The interesting thing for me as I think about the player types is that each of these player types is motivated by something different, and they're rewarded by a different kind of experience. So the achievers, they want to have that medal that's up on their wall. They want to have the badge that's on their LinkedIn profile. They want to be able to say, yeah, I climbed that mountain. The explorers are rewarded in a very different way. The explorers, for instance, love to be able to share something that they've found, some kind of insight. Caitlin, would love to know your thoughts. Where do you fall on this grid?
Yeah, total achiever over here. And I tend to geek out with people that I know. And Adam, I know I've shared this with you, but I wear a Garmin watch, and I am training for an Ironman right now. So there are a lot of badges that only I see on my Garmin watch that I specifically go after because I want that achievement. And I play this player type within my career as well, as I go after accolades and titles. And like some of that is very important for me. And I've crafted my career strategy to have some of those as dangling carrots, as motivators, as, ways to keep me inspired. But I'm also someone that plays along well with people, and I love to move together on projects with individuals. So I'll dabble over in the socializer component, and especially in the days of, some of us are working remote still. So understanding that I need some of that socializing component to motivate myself. So I'll ping a buddy and be like, hey, let's do a virtual coffee chat or talk about the project that we're working on right now, and then get that boost of energy through the socializing component to be able to continue to motivate myself to move forward. So I love, Adam, and I want to ask you in a minute what you consider your player type to be. I love how we can look at the psychological and the science components of game player types, and then strategically support, ourselves as well as team members on how we engage with others. Understanding, it would be amazing if we did, a fun quiz within our team dynamics to say, what kind of game player are you, and how can we engage with you? If you're the achievers or the explorers, like, oh, let me get every single explorer on a new innovative project because I need you to pick it apart and really figure out, what can we learn from that? So those are just fascinating ways to me how we can leverage gamification design within our own career strategy as well as leaders within an organization.
And you bring
Having
up,
said that, yeah, let's hear what you have to say.
I was just going to say, you bring up two really, really critical paradigms that I think we need to be aware of in terms of approaching this from an emotionally intelligent perspective. The first is in understanding ourselves, that no one is one-sided, that we play different games in different ways. And, I'm like you, I'm an achiever in a lot of ways. I love getting to the summit on a good hike. I love getting to that sunrise. I'm also an explorer in a lot of ways, where I love to ask questions that make people mad, and I love to share the answers that I find. So that's that first side of emotional intelligence, is being able to understand what kinds of rewards we like in what kinds of situations, because that's going to change. The other part of that you brought up is the way that I'm able to relate to people and start to understand what makes them tick and how I can help them feel rewarded. So when you and I were doing the gamification pilot and you and I were diving into Bartle initially, I took my 6-year-old on a hike. And that hike, I was very achiever mindset and was trying to get to the top of this beautiful hike down there in Georgia, kind of in Jim's neck of the woods. And I remember being frustrated because I could not get my 6-year-old to just move. There were bugs and there were sticks and there were leaves and so many things that he had to explore. And it hit me, oh, he's just playing a different game than I am. He's not playing an achiever game. For him, the reward of this is not getting to the top. For him, the reward of this is finding something interesting, asking a question about it, and showing me and his mom and his sister. So once we dive into this, that emotional intelligence, both internal and external, becomes a big way of how we use this in more of a professional setting.
Yeah, I love that call out. And then I'll add something too, because I was actually speaking with a coaching client just the other day, and he was sharing how inquisitive he is and how he actually gets a lot of pushback from it. And so I worked with him on understanding that there's probably that explorative, nature in him, and he's just naturally curious. So preparing his audience for, I have questions, is now a good time to talk about those versus just rapid fire, asking questions, which might make the receiver of that feel intimidated and caught off guard, and perhaps even feeling like, okay, you're not bought in, and that's a problem because I need you bought in. But it was actually him trying to buy himself in even more by understanding through his questions. Mm-hmm. And we've got some great call outs too in the audience of, Jim, thanks for joining today. Jim says a little bit of both, half achiever, half explorer, constantly blending those. And Olivia mentions it depends on the game. She's not really an achiever, but likes to accumulate achievements, but not really being on the top of the ladder, more of an explorer. Never really thought about socializer, but it changed my mind about it as we were talking about it and reevaluating these aspects, both in game and in life. So fascinating connection there. All right. So one of the things I want to transition into now, Adam, as we talked about, it's fascinating to understand the game player types within gamification design, but let's apply it a little bit more into our real life. And I wanted to share a couple resources to help you become clear on your strengths that you have. So Gallup Strengths Finder, I highly recommend. They have some fantastic resources. A fairly quick assessment, 20 minutes maybe, where you go through and answer some questions, and then you're able to get a report of your either top 5 natural innate strengths and talents or a full 34 list. And I love the full list because you can be aware of where your strengths lie as well as understand where your opportunities are. And to our conversation that Adam and I had earlier, to really figure out where can you double down based on your natural strengths, because those fuel you. Those are the things you do naturally and don't even realize you're doing it. Those are your differentiators. They come so naturally to us that we feel like other people do that too, but they actually don't. So being able to understand where you provide value in the world and how to optimize that is extremely important. What I also appreciate about this assessment is it gives us a language, a foundational language to start with. Because when we think about like, how do I provide value? How do I communicate that to others? Sometimes we're lost for the words on what to say. So this gives you a great starting point for that. The high five test is very similar, or maybe I should say assessment, but that one is a free version. So if you kind of want to tiptoe into what is this world of strengths, if you're extremely deliberative and you need to think through things and do your research, perhaps you invest in the high five and then go towards Gallup Strengths Finder, which is 30 years, accredited. So I wanted to provide those resources for you as you can take those away as homework and to really continue to be understanding of self-reflective opportunities on where you are strong within your talents and strengths. Today, where I want to challenge you, and I saw you were going to make a comment, Adam, so I'll go over to you in a minute. Where we're going to spend most of our time today in the challenge is to do a values exercise. So this is where I want you to have pen and paper in hand. And I also want you to keep in mind that this is a gut reaction exercise. I want you to think like quick on your toes, don't overthink it, and really identify with values that resonate with you. We'll go into that in a minute because I wanted to see, Adam, if you had any other comments.
Oh, I was just going to build on a little bit of what you said. I thought it was wonderful talking about sometimes we just don't have the words to say what we're feeling, and even what we're thinking. Our thoughts can't solidify if we don't have the right way to frame it. There was a philosopher that said the limits of my language mean the limits of my world. So kind of to your point, that right now in understanding our strengths and our values and who we are, now is a good time to invest heavily in learning. Read all that you can, listen to different people talk about these topics in different ways to help you solidify some of the things that you might be feeling but may not be able to articulate well. So this values exercise is a really great way to start to articulate the things that you feel and that you identify with in a really authentic way.
Absolutely. And I want to call out a couple comments that are coming in too, because we've got Jim saying, Strengths Finder, rather, it's an amazingly valuable process. Kim Lynn talks about she went from 0 to 60 just by learning her top 5. So imagine what you could do if you understood your whole range of where you have your strengths and where you should focus or just be mindful of or stay away from. Really, like if there's a job that requires your bottom 5 strengths, that's probably not something you want to apply for.
Stay off that.
Yeah, exactly. And then Julia and John both talking about total game changers to just have this as a really fantastic foundation. I also want to talk before we get into this exercise. So hopefully you found your pen and paper as I'm talking. I wanted to talk about some research around how we as humans make decisions. So there's 2 models that we'll lean on. One is a identity model, and the other is, Adam, the word is escaping me. Consequences model. You and I were just chatting about this a few minutes ago. So the consequences model, kind of self-explanatory. We try to figure out what's in it for me and how can I minimize anything negative and maximize anything positive to me as I'm trying to make this decision. The second, the identity model, says we'll ask ourselves a couple questions. Who am I? What type of person am I in this situation? And what would somebody like me do in this situation? So when we're trying to make a decision, we think about how do we maximize the opportunity, minimize, negative impacts, and what would a person like me do? And so it's really important to then understand who you are and your identity by being clear on your values, understanding your beliefs, and then how that shows within your behaviors. So I wanted to help, point that out to you as, the value, pun intended here, the value of a values exercise in establishing this language for yourself. Anything you want to comment on that, Adam? And then we'll jump into the exercise.
Yeah, I think I just want to pull out Patrick's comment. I find it harder to articulate under pressure. It's certainly hard sometimes to articulate our value proposition. This is something that in Ariel's work, what we do is we help people find the power of their authentic voice. So a lot of presence work, a lot of even storytelling work, communications work. And part of what we do is value proposition. What I'd encourage you is, as you go through and you start to understand your own personal value prop, practice it. Get it down. Have that elevator pitch. Someone can ask you, like, who are you? What do you do? And you can give them something quick and meaningful and memorable. But to Patrick's point, it's going to take practice. I think about digging into my old theater days when I'd have kids reciting lines, or when I was reciting lines myself. When you can wake up and start spewing lines, being like 5 seconds awake, that's when you know that you've got something really internalized. And that's almost the point that we have to be with our value proposition. When someone can ask you, and it can almost be a reflex, this is the value I bring to the world. So that's kind of where we want to be able to go with this.
Yeah. And I actually love that you mentioned that, because intentionally I've crafted this 5-day challenge to have it build upon itself. And day 4, we talk about building your 30-second elevator pitch. But in order to get there, you need all, your direction you want to go in life, what you're looking for. You need to understand who you are and your values. You need to understand how to market yourself. That's day 3. And then the networking piece, and then how to consistently execute on day 5. So thank you for mentioning that. And fantastic comments, Marty. Great suggestion there too, to get 360 feedback, asking others about yourself as well. So absolutely love it. Okay. So I'm sure you guys are like sitting on the edge of your seat, ready to understand what this value exercise looks like. And again, the next slide is going to feel overwhelming, because there is a massive list of values on the screen. First and foremost, take a screenshot of that, because I want you to save it, because you may not finish all of your thoughts in the last 15 minutes of today's session. The goal here is to review these and write down every value that you feel connects with you. Go do that first. I'm going to give you some time, and then we're going to circle and narrow down to the top 5. So I'll give you guys some time to go through that as I review some of your comments. Just realized I was on mute. I wanted to come on and just kind of talk to you guys as you were going through this exercise, to say that I will revisit this maybe, twice a year, look to see, inside of myself, do I feel like something has changed? Have I hit a milestone? Do I want to revisit where I feel my values lie? Just to kind of get that, pulse check, and, have that love language with myself about, where do I continue to provide value in the world.
And kind of adding to that too, it's okay to be different today than you were yesterday. It's okay to be different today than you were a year ago, or 5 years ago, or 10 years ago. If I tried to picture myself today, 10 years ago, I don't know if I could have. I mean, I had hair back then. It's just different, right? And so it's okay. And most people that I know that have taken the Strengths Finder assessment, will comment that when they take it again and again and again, they find that they've shifted, that they've morphed, that there's so much liquidity to who we are as people, and that's okay. I think that's something that should be embraced. Mm-hmm. That at different points in our lives, different values will mean different things to us.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I'm pretty much certain you may not feel like you've gotten through the rest of this list. So I want to talk about the next steps of it so you can at least write down after we finish today if you need to go back and finish it. So the first pass is writing every single value that connects with you. The second is to start bucketing into 5 buckets. Take all of your words and start to see where are the similarities, where are the trends, and move them into 5 different buckets. After that, you're going to look for the one that stands out the strongest to you that represents that bucket. You can have 3 to 5, but I would really max out on 5 key values that you feel focused on. So that's the flow of this exercise. First pass, write every value down that resonates with you. Second, start to group them into 3 to 5 buckets. And then look for the one word that stands out the most that represents each of those buckets. And those are really your core key drivers at this point in your life. And what's important about then understanding and how to utilize that and apply it into your life is, tenfold. It's understanding how you're making decisions, right? Going back to one of the identity model components of making decisions. It's, work-life balance. If you have family as one of your core, principles and values, then you will always put family first and say, to your job, no, I'll come back to it. Send out that email. I have received your request. I'll get to it tomorrow. I've got a family event. It helps you understand how you're making decisions within your life. It can also help guide you when you're looking at that next job opportunity. We're talking about leveling up, right? So advancement, where do your values lie and how does that point into a direction of which organization you work for in the future? So there's so many ways that you can then use these core values to help you continue to gain clarity on how to move forward within your life as you level up. Is anyone out there done? Where are my high achievers? Who wants the badge? Yeah, who wants the badge of, yes, I am done? If you've gotten to a point where 2 or 3 of your values, feel free to share them in the comments today. I'll share, last time I've done this, my core values were growth, which is interesting because it actually aligns with my number 1 strength with Gallup Strengths Finder, which is a learner. So growth opportunities are extremely important for me. Achievement, which is my game player preference, as well as another strength. Kindness is extremely important to me, and being bold. Taking bold action to be able to move forward. This one for me is important because it reminds me to step out of stagnation, and take the action that's needed for me to feel that I'm living my best version of life. So those are a couple of my core values.
I love that. And I love hearing how those play together, right? Boldness and growth for you, and you've always done it in such a kind way. Like, it's interesting hearing you talk about it because it's just what we see from you, very authentic in how you approach that. That's
Thank
cool.
you. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, that's you said it. It's authentic. When we think about how do we overcome imposter syndrome, understanding our identity a little bit more. For me, if I feel a little bit of that imposter, the bold value helps remind myself to step in, lean in. My strengths, where can I play towards those to overcome this moment of uncertainty and I'm feeling my imposter friend come in. I also use it as a cue. If I'm feeling uncomfortable and that imposter is stepping in, then I know, whoa, what is happening right now that is a growth moment? look, there's my value that comes out too. So how can I continue to move forward with that? So I'm starting to see my imposter as my friend.
And that's interesting too, because you brought that up earlier, in that there are these two ways that you can go about it, either an identity-based progression or a results or consequence based of, here are the things I'm going to get done. And both of those things can pull you out of something like imposter syndrome, where either A, you can remember, no, this is who I am. I think about my family. I built this sign for my kids and has a whole bunch of phrases on it. And one is kind of our motto, is honest, courageous, and kind. And that's kind of what I try and drill in, is this is who we are as a family. And having that identity can help push us through when we get stuck in the mud a little bit. But so can the other side of saying, well, this is what I do. This is the discipline that I live my life with. These are the goals that I go after. That can also pull you out of a slump that you might find yourself in.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for Olivia, my amazing community manager behind the scenes, watching all of the chats and posting some of them on the screen. I do want to address Marty. Yes, your 5 buckets of values are the ones that you've grouped together. So the 5 buckets are values that we feel grouped together well. The answer is yes. And then you'll find the one that stands out the loudest within that bucket. And we have some individuals posting their values in the screen now. And then a quick thought from Julia about language and this exercise. So she says, I think one of my values is sharing. I just noticed I'm taking a lot of words starting with the Latin cum. Of course, this is a bit far stretched, but hey, I'm a linguist down to the core. So you're what I love about this, Julia, is that, you're identifying your own trends in how you are making decisions of who am I right now, and using your values to kind of bounce off of that. All right, Patrick, accountability, empathy, happiness, making a difference, curiosity. I love, and I'll point out what I'm seeing then from this as an outsider. Accountability, you're going to be mindful about how others are acting around you. So keeping in mind too, where you'll want to reinforce accountability, but then also be aware that it might frustrate you if accountability is not in place within the environment of work. That is actually huge, because perhaps the team culture and dynamics may not be working out for you. So you're feeling an unease. You can have a conversation about that, or decide, how do I transition into a different team if that accountability factors just, you don't see any silver lining on the wall there. Empathy, happiness, making a difference, stepping in, being curious, where it matters most. It seems like Patrick's going to jump in. Connie shared family, community, independence, efficiency, creativity, belonging. So I see a lot of socializer components in here. Tie it back to game player with family and belonging and community. So you might do things to establish community around you, be part of a lot of groups, because you gain strength from situations of that. So this is great.
And there's something to be said too, rather than just identifying, this is one thing that I like or one thing that I'm good at. When you take the time to identify 5 or 6 things, then you start to see how those attributes are colored by each other. So I think about Connie's here, for instance, family, community, and belonging. Those are very, very similar. But then also independence is in there. So having a family, having a community, feeling belonging in a way that you can also be independent and authentic is a different kind of community than a community where you don't have that. So getting to see that whole picture, I think, for yourself can be hopefully very rewarding. Same with Patrick. I think about accountability means one thing, right? When someone says accountability, sometimes we tense up a little bit. That's not usually a nice word in the work environment, but accountability mixed with empathy is a whole different kind of leadership, and one that I think could be very, very powerful. So there's a lot of power then in this kind of game. I'm wanting to call it a game, an exercise that can help you understand that big picture of who you are.
Mm-hmm. And again, so a lot of this goes back to how we communicate about ourselves within the workforce too, because as I coach individuals, the number one trend I hear when I'm asking, like, well, what is it that you want to do? What are you looking for? There's usually an answer of, well, I just want to be meaningful and I want to help others. But then it's, okay, well, what does that help look like? And that's what I coach people through, is finding the language and the understanding, the self-knowing understanding of what does that look like and how does that look like, so I can start to do that and feel that purpose within my life. All right. Thank you, Marty, for posting yours. Joy. Absolutely love that. Like, you're giving me joy just by saying that word, isn't that powerful? Love, trustworthiness, positivity, and I'm going to add peace. Very, very, very cool. Love it. So we have got about 4 minutes left today. For those of you who are still working through it, I would challenge you to try to wrap it up in the next 5 to 7 minutes. Don't overthink it. We want your initial gut reaction when it comes to your values, because if you start to overthink it, you start thinking, what did my mom and dad say? What does society say? What does my spouse say that I should be? These are yours. So make sure you're sticking true to who you are. So with that, Adam, any other comments you want to say? Because then we'll go into a couple final slides and talk about what we're going to do tomorrow.
Yeah, I think just two really brief thoughts around this idea of becoming more self-knowing of who we are. As I think about this process on this point of the journey, there are really two different ways that you can look at it. The first is being self-knowing from an internal standpoint. A quick recommendation that I might make to you is we're thinking about the things that reward us. One thought is to keep a journal. Every day is a good day to have a good day. When you have a good day, write that down. Start to recognize, here's why that was a good day. If it wasn't a good day, write it down. Here are some things that happen. You might start seeing some patterns of, oh, these kinds of situations feel rewarding to me. I'd like to put myself in more of those situations. These kinds of situations or scenarios are not rewarding to me. They make me feel down or low or oppressed. I'm going to start avoiding those. That can really help as you're searching for that right bus that you want to be on, and being self-knowing just from like internally identifying kind of where you're at. The second, in terms of being self-knowing, is having that boldness, the courage to go and ask people to help you to identify what you don't know. So really short story. I know we're right up against that time. Short story. When I was a high school teacher years ago, I was doing a series of firesides for a local church. Come and do it for the youth that were there at the church, and another congregation would hear about it and they'd pull me in and I'd go do it there. Pretty soon I'm doing this traveling show around the city. And I had one gentleman that I've come to know and love very, very well. His name's Chris McChesney. He's a best-selling author. He and Jim partnered together for years and still do, like blood brothers. After one of these firesides, Chris came up to me and said, hey, have you ever considered doing this professionally? And I thought that he was talking about starting a church. I was like, Chris, I don't want to start a church. Who in their right mind starts a church? I don't want to do that. He says, no, like public speaking, like you could do this for corporations in a professional learning and development sense. I didn't know that existed. I had no idea that corporate L&D was even a field. I just didn't know. And so as you're on this journey, it might be worth reaching out to a recruiter, reaching out to, a connection on LinkedIn, just saying, hey, do you have 10 minutes? I could just ask you some questions. Here are some things that I'm good at. Are there any roles or occupations in your company or that you've seen in your past that might be a good fit for this? Because you never know if there's a role that you've just never heard of, in a department you've never heard of, in an industry you've never heard of, that might be a really nice fit for you. So find that courage to step out, find people to talk to, just start networking. People generally are generous with their time if you're just asking for some coaching or advice. 10, 15 minutes usually isn't too bad. So just two quick thoughts on being self-knowing.
I love that. And then we'll tie it in some more on day 4 when we continue to leverage networking and how to develop that strategy and what your me in 30-second pitch is. So awesome. All right, everyone, we are at time. I have a couple things I want to share with you, and then hopefully I'll see all of you tomorrow. 2 winners today. I want to go ahead and give a shout out. So Olivia, based on engagement today and interaction, who is our first winner? I believe you're going to pull it up on the screen. Julia, congratulations. You will be getting a copy of the streaking book. All right, guys, it's not the type of streaking you're thinking. We're going to talk about this on day 5, and this is about consistent and consecutive actions to help you become the best version of yourself, and it's a gamification concept. So congratulations to Julia. Thank you so much for joining and your engagement today. And the second winner today is Marty. Congratulations, Marty. Thank you again for your engagement as well. I appreciated reading all of your comments. And you get to win a 1-hour coaching session with myself, actually. So we'll get to have a really dynamic conversation and really tie in all the things that we're applying today in this 5-day challenge. So thank you. Now, with that, I want to also offer to everybody who has joined today, many of you for 2 days in a row, thank you so much. I'm offering a special value to you where we're going to take, this is all just the tip of the iceberg information and exercises, and we're going to put that into a 6-week coaching course to help you really get fine-tuned and have the clarity to build your career strategy, whatever your next steps look like. And so for everyone joining, a special offer, $597 to be able to work through a 6-week coaching program. And this offer goes until September 6th because we're starting September 7th. We're going to go. So that's all for you guys. Thank you so much. Tomorrow, day 3, we're talking about how to level up your career avatar. We've set the stage with purpose mapping. We've started to build out the character of who you are, your natural strengths, your avatar. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about leveling up, not necessarily through upskilling, but leveling up with your resume and your LinkedIn profile. Are your marketing materials up to date and ready to promote you at a minute's notice? So we're going to talk about your marketability tomorrow. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Adam, thank you so much for the dynamic conversation today, and we'll see you all tomorrow.
Perfect. Thanks, Caitlin. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.